So when does a leader know that it's time to go? Ian Chappell, it is often a tough call for cricketers in particular. Ricky Ponting was under a lot of pressure and, while he wasn't captain, he then put on a very impressive test performance over the summer. When did you know it was time to go?
Well, I remember not long after I got the captaincy, I spoke to Richie Benno, who I used to use as a bit of a sounding board, or not a bit, a lot of a sounding board. And I said, it must be a really tough decision. And he said, no, it's the easiest decision in your life. You'll know. And I remember the day at the Adelaide Oval, I looked at the clock and it was 11:05. And I thought, you've got to go, Ian. If you're clock watching and it's 11:05. So, but, you know, from the point of view, I mean, I didn't find it out until well after I'd retired. But Keith Miller's saying, appealed to me. Keith Miller said, I wanted to retire when people were saying, why did you, rather than why don't you? And I, when I took over the captaincy, I got the captaincy when Bill Lawry was sacked. And the first thing I said to my wife when I got home was, those so-and-sos won't get me like that. And so it was a bit of a driving force to do the job well enough that I didn't get sacked. But also, I'm the type of person who I didn't really want to lower my standards too much. And when I felt that I was getting to the stage where I was going to have to make that decision to start playing at a lesser level, I thought, no way, I'm not going to do that, and I got out. But it's harder now. See, I mean, it was easy for me because I retired getting $200 a test match, and I retired to getting $200 a day in the commentary box. Very easy.
Pretty easy decision.
Yeah, but you take a guy like Ricky Ponting, for instance. He could be earning, I wouldn't know, but probably somewhere between $1 million and $2 million a year. Where's he going to get a job like that when he retires from cricket? He ain't. So it's a much tougher decision, I think, for the modern day player.
Peter Beattie, you talked a little earlier about the transition to Anna Bligh, but for you personally, I mean, when did you start watching the clock, or when did you know after 3 election wins you were on top? How did you know it was time to go?
Well, it was actually 4, but who's counting? We got to the point where I had a whole program that I wanted to complete. I had a smart state strategy, and it had actually been completed. I could see that it was all working. All the things that I'd wanted to do, I had done. I had intended to go after 8 years, because I believe you do. 8 years was fair enough. It's like the 2 4-year terms the Americans have, and I actually don't think leaders should stay forever. We did have an issue involving one of our hospitals, so I stayed longer for that reason. But I had achieved what I wanted to achieve. I had my program had already been implemented. Anna was ready. I gave her all the tough portfolios, so she knew she'd been treasurer in charge of infrastructure, so she was clearly ready. The Labor Party vote was in good form. It was 59% two-party preferred, 50% primary vote. It was just the right time to go. Now, what happens in politics, of course, when you actually go, the rumours went around that I was, had a terminal illness, that my marriage had broken up, that I was having a relationship. All this sort of happened because people don't believe that politicians will ever go, because none of those were true.
A few weeks ago.
Well, exactly. People had views that Mark had gone for the wrong reasons, and I should say none of the things were true about him. The rumours I heard, or about me. Sometimes people actually do the right thing. The other thing I should say is it is good for transition, because after a period of time, the 7-day-a-week, 24-hour media cycle I talked about, you do get exhausted. Yep. And you actually do need to go. You need to renew. You need to refresh. And I had one incident that convinced me it was right time. We used to have community cabinet meetings. You'd go out and talk to the community. And a person came in and spent 5 minutes talking to me, and I thought, oh, God, whinging about nothing. And I investigated the matter afterwards, and actually they turned out to be right. And I thought, if I'm thinking that they've come to whinge to me and actually they were right, I should have listened then. We did sort the matter out. I did know it was time to go.
Christine Milne, you've been a deputy to Bob Brown for some time now. Looking at this issue of when it's time to move on and hand over the reins, what are your thoughts?
Oh, well, Bob Brown's been a great leader for the Greens in Australia. I think listening earlier about critical moments of courage, everyone will recall the Tampa. And basically that could have cost Bob his seat at the time, and he made the right decision. It was incredibly courageous, and as a result, a lot of people joined the Greens after that because it demonstrated the extent to which this was a conviction political party. So I think, as Ian said in a minute...
though, didn't it?
Well, I think the issue here is that when Bob decides it's time to go, he'll make that decision. But the great thing about the Greens is we've got incredible depth, and so that we will continue on to keep on articulating the important issues of the day. And, of course, the sustainability issues this century we're all across, and they are the critical ones.
Katie Lay, what about in the business world? Knowing when it's time to go is crucial for a company, for an organisation. Do leaders often know when it's time to go?
Sometimes they do, and sometimes the board has to give them a little shove. But, you know, often these days, the life that Peter Beattie's described for a politician, not dissimilar for a big CEO, not quite the same amount of pressure, but they're travelling a lot, they live 24/7, they're constantly on the BlackBerry. So 5 to 7 years is the usual cycle, and the sign of a really good CEO is one that exits the business in the way that allows a successor to come in an appropriate way. And we spend a lot of time in my business helping boards manage that succession, manage that transition, because it's very important just simply for the share price alone. If the exit's handled really poorly, and we've seen some of those, the share price goes down. But good transition strategies, we saw one, I think, some years ago at Wesfarmers, Michael Chaney to Richard Goyder. That was the textbook. Brilliant transition. The company stayed in very good hands and was steady.
Richo, there rarely are such smooth transitions in politics, particularly in the Labor Party. You've seen some messy ones over the years. Why are they? Is it simply a matter of the leader thinks they should always stay in the job?
Well, look, I think Peter Beattie would have to be the exception to this rule, but I once wrote that all leaders change and they all change for the worse. And they do. And unfortunately, one of the things that happens then is they all want to stay. And you go to them and you say, mate, it is time to go. And then they'll say they want 6 more months or a year, but they always want more time. And eventually you just have to say, well, we're going to have to blast you out if you won't go. And they don't like that. And I think the classic example is Hawke. Could have gone out an enormous hero, easily, because he was given plenty of warning. He could have gone out a hero, but he just wouldn't go. And so in the end, it's a messy way of getting it done, but it had to get done. We wouldn't have won 93 without it being done. Everyone remembers he was at 72%. No one remembers he got to 27. And so you really do have to sometimes just shove them along. But the smart ones, Beattie, Carr, Rann, they get out on top. And then if you're Carr, you can make a comeback because you never really got yourself into that much strife.
I want to finally just go around once again quickly to get some thoughts on, for a lot of parents or grandparents who might be watching and thinking they want to instill leadership qualities in their kids. What can they do? What can they pass on? Cardinal Pell, to you on that. How can parents or grandparents help children learn leadership qualities?
I don't think you can instill leadership qualities. I think they're either there or they aren't. But you can help every child to develop to his or her capacity. And the big thing you've got to do is give them room to move. Give them opportunities to lead. Let them have room for initiative. And teach them all the importance of vision, courage, sticking to your principle. One of the Christian brothers back in my day would repeatedly say, look, don't go with the crowd, stand on your own 2 feet. It's one of the limited number of things I remember on that, but it's good advice.
Peter Beattie, I suppose the point is not every kid is going to be a leader. Nonetheless, as someone who has been a leader, what advice can you pass on?
I think it goes down to life experiences. I mean, I was a ward of the state and I went through difficult, traumatic circumstances. I was raised by my grandmother. What she believed in was education. She believed that you should play a sport, and I played 3, because you learn things when you play sport. You learn skills, you learn teamwork, you learn all those sorts of things. She believed you should get involved in theatre. So in other words, what you did, you learned as many life experiences as you possibly can. But it also came down to one other lesson I learnt from her, and that is it was about hard work. If you weren't prepared to be someone totally committed to hard work, it didn't matter what you're in, you would fail. So those, I think, were the ingredients. Have a broad experience in life when you're a child, Try everything and see what you're good at. Know that you've got to work hard at it. But education, education, education. It's like being positive. If you're a political leader, education's the key.
Ken Gillespie?
I don't disagree with anything that sort of Peter said there. I have a 17-year-old daughter, and we're bringing up with good family values, etc. But the thing we concentrate on a lot, and I think that I find missing a lot in our community, is self-accountability. Being able to look at yourself and be accountable for your own actions rather than progressing through life blaming everybody else for what you've got. And so I think as I grew up in the military and I looked at things, people who fell out along the way were those who weren't prepared to be self-accountable for their actions or the actions of people under their control. And so it's something that I focus on.
Ian Chappell, what do you think can be passed on to kids on qualities they need for leadership?
Well, I think you're either lucky or unlucky, even the parents you get, and fortunately we were very lucky. Something that was important, has been important to me right throughout my life, that my father told me, I think I was about 7, and obviously I'd got into strife, and he said to me, son, don't lie to me. He said, if you've done something wrong, he said, you tell me and you won't get into trouble. He said, but if you lie to me to try and get out of trouble, you'll be in big strife and I'll belt you. And, I mean, that's helped simplify my life. I've realised that by telling the truth, you save a hell of a lot of messing around, because if you're telling a lie, you've got to remember which lie you tell to which person, and you get yourself into a hell of a tangle, and I'm very thankful to Martin for simplifying my life. And the other thing, and I would say this about my daughter, the important thing that I think I did with her was, if I said, Amanda, don't do that, and she said, why? It was not because I bloody well told you not to do it. I would try and give her a reason, why she shouldn't do it or why she should do it. And I hope that that's been a help to her.
It's communicating as much as anything. Jenny, I guess this does get back to what you were saying earlier about the principles, whether it's honesty, whether it's hard work, the principles and values that you can instil in children.
Yeah, I think advice to parents and grandparents is to bring your children up to be people of integrity, strong people. I think the sense of resilience is really important. I think that making sure that kids have all opportunities to make mistakes and to learn from them, to try to sort things out for themselves rather than just trying to, make sure that they have completely free and easy lives. And I think that helping them to be well-educated, thoughtful young people who want to make a difference. Those are the things that ultimately you do best for your sons and daughters.
Harold Mitchell, you've been a success in business. What would you share?
Well, firstly, to your kids, of which I've got 2, and they're wonderful, independent people. It's a 24-hour job in teaching them almost anything, so you can't put it into, into little slots. And so if you can live the example, they're watching it. My son said to me when he's been number 2 in our business successfully for a long period of time. He said to me when he might have been early 30s, I think. He's 40 now. I said, that's a very, very clever thing to do, son. He said, I said, how do you work that out? But it was probably a bad thing to say to him. He said, Dad, I've been watching you since I was 6, and I didn't know that. And you just never know when they're watching, so don't do the wrong thing ever.
That's a tough bar you've set there. Warren Mundine, just finally, on this question, what do you think?
I think you're right. It is. It's, especially for fathers, my dad was out working all the time. I was very blessed by my parents. For kids, it was about, we saw what he did. It's about the integrity of yourself. It's about your own morals. It's about your own principles. And it's funny, kids are the most smartest people I've ever met. That they see things, that's how they learn. If you talk about things and you act a different way, then you lost the battle already. From birth, you be straight with your kids. This is the way it is. This is what it's about, and you act like that. And when you do that, that's when it all happens.
Neil Flett, when it comes to trying to teach leadership qualities, this is what you do. What is your advice to people?
I'd advise
any parent, and I'm certainly going to do it with my grandchildren, although they're a bit young at the moment. But Charlie, if you're watching, mate, I'm going to teach you. I'm going to teach them how to present and how to persuade and how to use evidence and how to inspire people and convince them to do things, because I think persuasive skills are more and more important, and certainly will be when he enters business.
And that, Christine Milne, I suppose, is good advice for aspiring politicians too.
Yes, it is, but you have to have the courage of your convictions. That is what I would say to young people. You can try to bring people up with a set of values, but when the tough times come, you have to stand up for those values regardless of the circumstances you find yourself in. And the other one I really think Ken was right about, and that is taking personal responsibility. There is such a temptation to play the victim, to say it's somebody else's fault that I had a poor teacher, or these people picked on me, or I didn't have as much as anyone else. To actually get kids to think, I actually am responsible for this, I'm not a victim, I can choose the way I live my life, and so on, those sorts of things. So I think the courage of convictions and taking personal responsibility are critical.
Katie Lowe, to you on this. What if people are aspiring to leadership roles in business, what can they do?
Curiosity about the rest of the world. I think they need to feel comfortable that we are part of a global economy and a global environment. We need to feel comfortable with that. I mean, I'm from Yorkshire. My mother gave me the travel bug very early on and ended up here as a migrant at age 21. And I think if in Australia we're particularly lucky that we live in a multicultural society, we want our kids to be able to speak preferably an Asian language, to feel comfortable with different cultures, to feel that we're able to make a contribution in the rest of the world, to feel comfortable with the rest of the world.
Richo, for the aspiring political leaders out there may not be many in the field at the moment, but what do they need to do?
Well, I think it's a matter of what as parents, what you can do for children. I don't think you know if your child's going to be a leader. I think my old man worked out I'd finish up somewhere in the labour movement, so what he did was impart wisdom and life lessons about the labour movement. If they'll rat on you once, they'll rat on you twice. Know your weaknesses long before you know your strengths. He taught me a whole lot of things, and they all turned out to be true. Without them, I wouldn't have gotten anywhere. So I think imparting wisdom, along with the integrity that people have talked about, is the important thing. I could never be as good a man as he was, but maybe I could do better politically. That's how it turned out.
And Father Chris Riley, finally to you. I mean, you lead so many young people, as I said earlier, from dark places back on track. What can you teach them about
I think
their future leadership
Yeah, the
roles?
courage of conviction is really important for me. One of my girls in class the other day said, "You speak out and you don't care what people think of you, do you?" And I said, "Absolutely, I don't give a damn, because the only thing I speak out about is protection of children. That's the only thing I speak about, and they're important." And I think the other thing is we need to look at strengths in kids. And there's a psychologist about 50 years ago, Riddell, who said every kid needs someone who is passionately behind and supportive of them. And I keep saying to parents, be their cheer squad. And the other thing which has come out is kids may not listen to what you say, but they do what you do.
Yeah, I think everyone's in agreement on that. Well, we are out of time. It's been a fascinating discussion. I want to thank you all for taking part in it, and I want to thank you for watching at home as well. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.